Hello, hello, everyone. You're listening to episode 2 of the Final Sector podcast. My name is Kyle. I've got Michael here as well.
Hello.
We're excited to, finally bring this podcast back. We meant to bring one back between the Miami and the Australian Grand Prix, but due to a few teething issues, we couldn't do that. So we've got a lot to discuss today. We've only had 2 races that have actually passed, but still there's plenty that's come out of the woodwork. A lot more than we've been able to cover in our race previews and race breakdown. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah.
I know at the start of last podcast, we kind of started off talking about a few of our surprises from the year. I feel like with the last 2 races, there's been less kind of more big surprises and more lots of little things that have come out. I mean, drivers that seem to be doing well at the start of the year are continuing to do well. Those that are struggling are continue to struggling. So I think rather than asking you, I guess, what's been your biggest surprise over the last 2 races, I guess we can just talk about a few little things.
Yeah.
I know before we were looking at a little bit about the sprint races, for example. Like we had a sprint race at Imola since then. We had a pretty...
feels like it's been 6 years since the last race.
I know, yes. We went to Miami, which is a very different type of race as well. And if you haven't checked out our race breakdown for that as well, we've recently put that up on Spotify and YouTube, so make sure to give that one a listen as well before you listen to this one.
I apologize for that being as late as it was. I've been very slack with the editing, but it came out today. Hopefully, if this podcast goes up on Spotify today, which is Sunday, then the video was also put up earlier today. So, it was... Try to get it out on Fridays, but it's been a weird week for me. But it is up, so check it out. I think it was a good. I listened back to it. I think it was a really good discussion. So,
and I guess if you're listening to these, if you're someone that listens to them while you're working, then you've got a double whammy to get you through the week. So you're welcome, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly why I left it till Sunday to edit and release. Yeah, 100%.
We've looked at the analytics. We've gone, this is when the people want it. There wasn't people messaging me every day last week going, "Where's the video? Where's the video?" I'm like, I don't know. See, we've had kind of the last 2 races. I feel like everything on track though we've kind of covered. Is there any kind of points you might want to start with looking at the last 2 races, I guess, on track, or should we just get into a bit of news and other things going on off track?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have sort of covered most of the things that we really need to cover. The thing we sort of talked about in the Miami breakdown is, I think, more of the interesting things that are coming out of the last couple of races is, which makes sense being that there's more races under the belt for the drivers with these new cars, is that we're starting to see themes popping up. Drivers are settling down, they're understanding the cars, the teams are understanding their cars, they're bringing updates to make their cars faster, and they're some teams are understanding their problems more than others, but you're starting to see trends, you're starting to see themes, and I think that's again goes into what you're saying about there's more little things. It's more nuanced than just like Ferrari big fast, Red Bull big boom
Red Bull
engine,
smoky.
Like it's a little more nuanced because it's the field sort of spread, and where the teams are sort of stacking up. It's sort of they're sort of finding their homes a little bit. For what you expect to see for the rest of the season, I would think. So yeah, I mean that's more what I've sort of gathered from the last couple of races is more that side of things. But yeah,
no, it's basically what I've been thinking about too. And I guess as well, because there's been less emphasis on, hey, how's everyone getting on, we've seen more of these, as we say, these little things kind of popping up, and I guess because there's less big talking points to talk on, there's been more of the little things that have come up. Just to get a bit of discussion going, one point that I think has actually come up only over the last 2 races is that it seems like F1 are starting to trial a few different things from the media side of things. So for example, on YouTube, they've started putting out a lot more of the content that I enjoyed last year, on the Griddle the Grid type of stuff, with actually ask the drivers lots of trivia things and that.
Yep.
I think that worked well last year and the drivers seem to enjoy it. On the other side, they're starting to bring back things like the cool-down room, where they bring a camera into the cool-down room and they see the drivers. If you've been watching F1 the past few years, if you didn't, quit because it was so boring, you would have seen all those clips from Rosberg and Hamilton, who ever ended up in 3rd place, and some of the tension between them. And most of the time, there was nothing really to watch except the 2 of them just ignoring each other and staring at each other from across the room and throwing things at each other.
So good.
But we didn't see that for a bit. And I think this kind of loops into a bigger conversation, I guess I wanted to have, which is that, some of the criticism on having... We used to just have interviews, for example, on the podium where the drivers would come out of their cars, we'd see them, they'd, go over to their team, and they'd hop up on the podium, they'd celebrate, and then you'd see someone like Martin Brundle or an ex-driver go up and interview the drivers. And even then there was some criticism going, oh, well, these are kind of useless because they'll say the same thing, or the drivers, are still high on adrenaline, they just want to calm down. And then they kind of brought that forward, so now as soon as they get out of the car, they interview them, and you kind of... It was kind of funny in Miami. You saw a bit of the drivers kind of going... They obviously had a really tough race, and they had... Oh, I don't remember his bloody name. Who was the guy that was interviewing them? That's shocking, I don't remember.
Yeah, that was a terrible interview. I did not listen to most of that. Oh, God. That was hard to watch, like... It was not good.
I'm going to find his name. I'm doing justice.
But I know what you mean. Like, even with the last year when they trialed the driver of the day interviews as well, where they interviewed them in the car, like on the cool down.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know about this, man. Just fucking wait until they're out of the car. Let them speak to their teams and do all their, like, cool down procedures and get into the garage. I don't know that... I don't think that was a good thing. I haven't seen it at all this year pop up, so maybe they decided that that was a bad idea and they've just kind of dropped that. But I was not a fan of that one. I hope that stays away.
Yep.
But
yeah, to credit, it was Willie. It was, I believe his name, you pronounce it as Willie T. Ribbs. To his credit, he has done motor racing in the past, and he has been semi-successful. So I think it was a bit rude for some people saying this guy has clearly got no idea what he's talking about, because he probably has more interest than most people. But I think it was a bit more of a Miami spin, and there was some shots as well of Sainz kind of looking a bit like, who is this guy? I feel a bit uncomfortable here. I think what he was calling them all baby or something. What was it he was saying to them all?
I took that entire conversation is like out of my mind. I zoned out of that because I'm like, if I listen to more of this, it's just like secondhand cringe stuff. Like, I just couldn't do it.
Yes. So. Yeah. But I think in general, look, I think as well, the bigger already, even though they've only just brought back the what do you call it? The race cool down room where they're actually kind of filming the drivers, not really to interview them. And it kind of worked last weekend, but I feel like that's because they weren't really expecting it. And also by coincidence, they actually had a TV showing the highlights, and the three drivers just naturally sat down and were watching it. And that kind of was like cool because they didn't really need to comment. It was like, oh, this is nice. Yeah. And then it feels like already with the next week, they kind of knew it was going to happen, and they seemed to be, like a little bit kind of like quiet and dormant. And there was even a little bit of drama because Sainz, because he was overheating like crazy, took his shirt off because he wanted to cool down. Yep. And you can hear the kind of director in the background going, please put your shirt on. And you can hear Sainz going, well, just don't film me. And then he starts swearing. The director's like, please don't swear. And he's like, and I'm like, already if this is the second race and already it's clearly uncomfortable, it's not nice for us to watch it because the drivers look uncomfortable. Yeah. It's like, I get that, we want to be inside, the minds of the drivers and see what they're thinking. But when you have, you're just after a race, they've been going for sometimes up to 2 hours, sometimes in, super heat, a lot of focus and concentration. The cool down room is supposed to be where they can just cool down for a second, debrief with each other, have a drink, before then they go out in the podium. And I feel like putting a camera up there just has to keep them in that media mode, And there was even the issue when they used to film the driver, what do they call it, the driver meetings before the race weekend, right? And some of the drivers said they used to take it really seriously. When they started filming it, they just wanted to goof off in front of the camera, but the point of it was, well, that should be a safety meeting, and they realized fair enough that they said, well, actually maybe we shouldn't film this because there's a purpose here, and everyone's just acting in media mode. So I don't know what the balance is. I mean, I guess because so many people kind of felt uncomfortable about it, and Sainz as a driver obviously was happy to make his point clear. Yeah, that he was like, I don't care, like, this is my point to cool down. Maybe it's just refreshing that we have a different driver in that room that actually is happy to speak his mind. I don't know, I guess just from your side, what's your thoughts? What do you think is too much? Do you think maybe there's something else they could try that they haven't tried yet? I mean, I feel like the media pen is generally enough from my side anyway, and most drivers seem to be happy with the media pen. Is that enough? I don't know, what do we think?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, like, kind of echoing your points, like, when it comes off, it's really cool, because, again, you get this sort of candid, conversation things, because it's all televised, and because they're like, oh, you have to wear a shirt and you can't swear. And I think both times so far they've come back and said, oh, we apologize for the language there. And it's just like, yeah. But that's the risk you take. They're in the cool down room. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yes.
That's them cooling down after the race.
And these are the guys that have been fighting sometimes for the win, right? They're going to be the most kind of adrenaline based than anyone out there.
Yeah, especially something like Miami, where apparently it was just that hot. Even reports coming out that Ricardo had to take like less water to try and save weight. Like he couldn't have as much drinking water to try and save weight on that car. Which, by the time you get out of that car, if you've got less water and it's a physically demanding race, we've talked about how it's a difficult circuit, and because of how hot it was and just the circuit itself, and you're taking less water, and it's just like, you're going to come out of that, you're going to feel exhausted. And then you've got in the room that you've got, 5 minutes to just sort of calm down before you come out. Your first proper time
to sit down, take your shirt off, just think and process and that. And immediately there's like a camera right in your face. It's just it's like so fair enough to Science, who's just like, I do not care. Like, I'm just going to chill. I'm chatting to my teammate about stuff.
Yeah. So like, I think in theory, it's a cool idea. And like you said, we've seen it work, and it can be very entertaining. But I think if we want to see, the personalities of these drivers, I think a lot of that can come from those videos that you were talking about, the grill the grids, the sort of outside of the race weekend, or like outside of that adrenaline packed, in the race or in the qualifying, outside of those moments, they can do all that stuff fine. But yeah, don't just kind of shove a camera in someone's face and then be like, dance monkey dance. Like, that's effectively what they were saying to Science. Like, no, you have to do it this way. It's like, why? Why though? If he's been allowed to take off his shirt and he's been allowed to swear in there before, but now he's not allowed to because there's a camera in there. It's like, okay, take the cameras out, which is, honestly fair enough.
It's not like that's the only thing that they're doing as well. As you say, they've got all the other elements that they're doing as well. And to their credit, yes, I mean, they know their drivers, they know they've got commitments to media and such, but there's still a line, right? Like, I'm not saying never show them in public ever again, so no one ever sees them. They're just 20 faceless drivers with helmets. You never actually see their faces, right? Yeah. That's, of course, too much. But yeah, as you said, there's a time and place and a way to do it. And I didn't mind some people used to criticize like the podium interviews. I mean, way back when they used to actually, like, they don't even televise the post-race interviews anymore. You basically have to go on YouTube and find a ripper or something, basically, because it's not really televised. But that used to be the commonplace. They'd have the race, and then they'd have the podium, and then after that, they would show you the interviews afterwards live. And that was kind of like the post-race breakdown. Then they brought it ahead to be post the podium, and they brought it ahead to be just to get out of the cars. And it's like, it's just like I don't know, like when it started, everyone was kind of like, yeah, this is a bit too much, and they went, oh well, let's just keep doing it. And every time you kind of get the same reaction. The winner's like, oh yeah, good job to the team. The guy that comes second goes, we missed out, we have to look at that. The third guy's like, I'm happy to be here, and that's the same comments every time. It's so like, true. Okay, we get it.
It's so true.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested to see if next race, if they show the cooldown room again, who's in there, and if they kind of have a bit of a jab at it. Well, I think it's a bit of a trend here, how we're kind of seeing, I don't know if I just never noticed before, but drivers in general seemingly being a bit more confident and kind of, not, kind of, they get, like the media red card held up and they just obey to it, right? Part of that theme we saw was, for example, there's been a bit of controversy with the FIA in trying to enforce a few rules, and some drivers in particular, like Hamilton and Vettel, have gone out of their way to show their disapproval of what they're trying to push.
Yeah.
In Hamilton's case, it's about some of the jewellery he's got, and to kind of assert his dominance there, for lack of a better term. In his pre-race press conference, he was wearing like 3 or 4 watches or something, I think it was.
Yeah, and like
kind of show that he's
8
very
rings
much...
and like all this shit. So yeah.
Yeah. And from Vettel's side, there's been a bit of controversy on drivers having to wear proper underwear for kind of fire safety kind of stuff. And as part of his way to test those rules, he was wearing his underwear on the outside, I think, for the Friday. Some of the media items for that as well. Again, I don't really say it's hard. I don't know if I really want to say my piece on it or go into the actual drama of that too much. I think it's really between the FIA, between FOM, and between the drivers to kind of figure out,
find a middle
a
ground
happy
or
medium. Yeah, it feels like as outsiders, we're kind of just watching it, but none of that's really for us. It's all internal for safety in that. I just think it's interesting how what we do see is a lot of the drivers, in this case, kind of not being afraid to speak a bit of their mind. And maybe that's a good thing, showing that actually, it's not like the days of Bernie, where Bernie pulls a gun out and everyone's like, I love you, Bernie, you're great. We're kind of
Get in the
past
car.
that now. Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was going to specifically ask you about this. I guess if you'd seen a similar thing. I don't know. I feel like drivers in general seem to be more outspoken, able to speak their word, which is a good thing. Maybe if they're more comfortable and confident to do that.
Yeah, I think so, and I think social media has obviously helped a lot with that. The fact that they can speak their mind and use their social media platforms as much as they have. Hamilton and Vettel are both probably two with maybe Alonso and I guess possibly Verstappen at the moment. Like they're two of the biggest names in Formula One. So the fact that they're making these, if it was no disrespect, but let's say it was Ocon, less than half the people would probably care because it's like, oh, who cares?
Very true.
Who cares about Ocon? It's not 7-time
news. It's not
Lewis Hamilton. It's not
6 p.m. newsworthy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, the other thing is you've got. I've just read this thing half an hour ago. I saw this pop up, and they're talking about how Hamilton might not race the Monaco Grand Prix if this sort of, I guess, this FIA F1 feud thing with his jewelry keeps going on. They've given him, I think, with Miami, they gave him
an exemption.
For two races. This one in Spain, and then it's obviously Monaco after that. So, he's talked about how he can't physically remove some of his jewelry. I think his earrings and his nose ring potentially.
Yes, it's not a simple screw-on, screw-off kind of thing. It would more require certain tools or people or
surgery or something. It was something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's a real tough one. I can't really comment on it. I can kind of see both sides of it. Like on one hand, they obviously brought in, given what happened last year and the flirting of the rules and whatnot, they've kind of gone the opposite direction. I think we might have talked about this before, but they've gone sort of the opposite direction, and they're just like obviously trying to enforce every rule now, for better or worse. So, and
that's what we should say. This isn't a new rule, same with the underwear thing. These have actually been written in the rules for a while. It's just that they've kind of, like I said, other things to focus on. They haven't really narrowed down on it, but they've come up and they've said, hey, by the way, these two rules exist. You've all signed the dotted line. You need to make sure you're following it. And obviously the drivers have come out and gone, well, okay, you never really put this in our faces for a while now, so I think Hamilton even said, oh, you've never stopped me doing it before. The response was kind of like, true, but it's just because it was kind of never brought up, but it has been there, and they are within their rights to kind of enforce that, unless then there's a bigger, thing to bring up to say, hey, should this still be a rule or not? I mean, both these things as well are in the interest of safety, like if you think about in terms of... If they say in terms, if you're trying to distract a driver, or if they suddenly need to get their suit off, or there's a fire or anything like that, there's a chance of like metal piercings and that catching on something or on fabric or heating up in a fire and burning or marshals. Like there are, permutations. It's the same reason why if you're a chef, you can't, have a ton of jewelry, because if your jewelry drops in your pot of soup, then that's a disaster and a biohazard, and someone eats that. That's why they just say it's not worth it. I know there's some blurred lines. I think a few drivers got exemptions for things like wedding rings and that. So. But again, it feels like it's more internal. It's just come up because, Hamilton's basically walking around as a walking, chain, just hey, by the way, everyone, if I want to impose this, I'm not backing down. I saw something else where if he continues to race after his exemption passes with the jewelry, it's something like a $250,000 fine every time he races or something, allegedly. I don't know if that came from the FIA going, by the way, this is what you're going to have to pay to try and threaten him. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is reading this article is like, there's a very good chance he could just because drivers are being they have to be scrutinized the same way that a car is scrutinized. So
yes, true.
If the driver is scrutinized and they're like, okay, he's not, he hasn't taken one out of his jewelry, so he hasn't been scrutinized. He can't leave the pit lane. They could literally be like, under the rules and regulations, they could be like, you're not allowed to leave the pit lane in the car. If you do, then you'll be disqualified.
That might be where they get that. So, disqualified to get slapped with that massive fine. Right?
Yeah. So it's potentially that could be the way they go. I don't know that it will come to that. I really do hope they find some kind of happy medium. This just seems like it seems a little. I was gonna say petty, but it just seems a little almost irrelevant. Like Even with
you feel like it should be able to solve with like five people sitting in a room and
exactly.
just chatting it out. And yet we've seen like weeks of it and it still seems to be blowing up. Like we're all waiting for next weekend to see how much jewelry he turns up with and how many drivers are wearing underwear on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like there's a bit of like there's more of a disconnect between like the FIA and the drivers or the F1 teams and things like that. There's just it doesn't seem like they're communicating a huge amount at the moment.
And I think even some, because I think the actual ruling forces in the FIA is slightly different as well. So there's even some comments saying is there even an alignment there between what FIA want to push and what F1 or FOM, whoever is the other party that's trying to push as well. So it's almost like a 3-tier kind of breakdown on these little things.
Well, even like speaking of the disconnect, the reason why I bring this up is I'll touch on something very, very briefly. We don't need to go into detail, but the FIA, the F1, they obviously wanted to increase the sprint races from 3 to 6 for next year. Apparently, they got unanimous approval from the F1 teams to go to 6, and the FIA, they've sent it all off the FIA, and the FIA have basically just said, no, we're not going to put that through just yet. But it's like it just doesn't seem like they're talking to each other that much. So it's like, oh yeah, no, we're okay with it, and the FIA is like, no, we want to see the rest of the sprint races before we put it through. It's like, oh, okay, but everyone's already agreed, so
it's almost like these are your 10 teams that are actually out there on the track.
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah. So
there's enough competency there. It's not like they're saying, oh, we should drive around with, I don't know, like a spare tire in the back. And the FIA is like, what the hell are you talking about? No, it seems like they're like, we want to do more sprints. I mean, they tried to push more sprints anyway at the start of this year, and I feel like it was actually some of the teams that clamped a bit back on that.
Yep.
So now they're pushing it forward, and the FIA is like, no, we're going to pull it back. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I don't know,
It's
man.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just don't like that disconnect's happening, because then you get stuff like that, and you get stuff like the jewelry and the fireproof underwear thing that drags on for way longer.
This could only
than
be the start of it, yeah.
Exactly. It's like, it could just be resolved. Just fucking have a conversation with the drivers, with the teams, and be like, okay, this is why we're doing this. If you're not happy with it, like, just have those discussions. You can have those. You can bring those together. They've got 2 weeks to the next, well, a week now to the next race, but they've had breaks between the last couple of races. They've had the time to be able to do this and have the conversations, and obviously they haven't. If they have had them, they've gotten nowhere with them, because
they've just tried to. I don't know.
I
Probably talked about this a lot more than I expected, but it's just interesting that it's a thing.
And that's the problem. We shouldn't be talking about it this long. We shouldn't be. We should be moving on. It should be.
What we should be talking about, what the drivers would be talking about, is things like actual safety. I mean, coming out of Miami, I think something that was even brushed over was even at the start of the race weekend, is that parts of the track actually started to already like peel up and break.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about driving in a car that needs like grip and not surface that's going to suddenly literally fall apart under you, that's not good. And even I think Ocon was saying after his crash that if you look at his crash, I mean, he had the same crash as Charles basically in practice, but particularly in Ocon's crash, it wasn't like it was that big a crash, but I think he experienced something like a 50G impact because it was just a hard wall there rather than a safer barrier.
Yep.
And he was kind of like, it seems kind of obvious that someone's going to go off here, and even on a light incident like he had, a safer barrier would have heavily reduced that, right? And it probably would have just like, what's the alternative? That instead of sliding down the wall for a while, they actually just kind of stop into a barrier. So, I saw even a few of those comments come out, but they've almost just been buried because everyone's talking about this other stuff, actual matters of safety. I'm sure internally, they're talking about the FIA and that, but I just find it ironic that in the media and outside world, everyone's just focusing on the jewelry and the underwear, and not that kind of Ocon had a massive impact, that actually he didn't feel right even in the race, he still felt a bit off after that. Yeah, exactly. I think similar comments were coming from Sainz, and yet we kind of no one's really been talking about it that much in comparison, so...
maybe that's just the way social media is as well. They'll take the small things, the small kind of petty things, and blow them way out of proportion. It could just be that.
Well, I guess the things that more, sell a click rather than just
that's it. Yeah,
driver unhappy because he was hurt after a crash. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking about the circuit issues as well, I read this article. The circuit designer looking back at the weekend and the issues and. What he does to what he's going to do to improve it for next year as well, is regarding that like debris on the road like the track surface. Apparently they use this thing to condition the track called FOD Boss. I don't know what it is, but apparently it's
Okay.
it's this thing they drag across the track, and it's like this electrostatic way of lifting debris off a circuit. So they tried to like blow all the debris off the track. They tried to sweep it all off the track, and apparently there's only so much they can do because of how abrasive the surface is. That apparently this FOD Boss electrostatic thing, which they eventually did on the Saturday morning before the qualifying, they actually did eventually get those in, and that apparently helped the track immensely. So that's something they probably figured out a bit later than they would have liked, but yeah, that's, I would say that's going to be less of an issue going forward. They've obviously found a solution pretty quickly. Regarding the chicane, he also brought that up as well. I know a lot of drivers are talking about how that chicane, it's not suitable for the cars. It's just way too tight.
A car never looked good going through that. They just were fumbling and bouncing around.
Yeah. So, yeah, he said there's still a lot of analysis to be done. He is going to be looking at tweaking that chicane to try and make it a bit better. I don't know if that includes that runoff or the barrier. I would assume it would. I would hope it would. But yeah, so I think, it's good that they're already, like, this was, I think, the day after the race as well. He'd already had this interview when it was looking back at it like this. So it seems like they're really committed to making sure it does become a really good racetrack and something that is safe and something that the drivers are going to enjoy. So
they've got a multi-year deal as well, so you'd almost hope immediately after that, everyone's saying, okay, that was an event, but obviously there's a lot of things there to address coming next year, hopefully, and it's good at least the organisers and the designers are kind of like, oh no, we've been giving notes all weekend and we're going to come out next year and, smash it out of the park for what the first race should have been. So, I guess we'll see. Yep,
that's it. So, actually, I'm literally just scanning through the article now, and he's talking about the Tech Pro barrier. So
yes,
so that's good. So obviously they've that's really the three issues that I've seen from that track is the track surface, the chicane itself, and then that the Tech Pro barrier at the entry to the chicane or the runoff the chicane. So. It's good that they're looking at it, and hopefully next year we'll have something that's the drivers like a bit better, something that's a little less fiddly through there, and something that is ultimately safer as well. So I think that's good.
I guess we'll touch on a few other little tidbits before we go into some bigger kind of chunky stories. I guess just after the race, there was some pretty strong rumors from a few people in the paddock coming out. There was apparently like concrete deals of Latifi being signed out midway through the season. I mean, we've kind of heard murmurs of this, and I guess if we're looking at the whole grid and you need to pick a driver that's probably underperforming, there's no surprises. It kind of comes down to Latifi. I think earlier in the year, some of the early comments with some people going, "Oh, they should put Piastri in that car."
Yep.
More from what I heard recently was that people they'd signed a deal to get De Vries in the car, which was another contender for the other seat other than Albon. But then I think a few days later, one of the big guys that was running this story basically came out and he said, "False alarms. I had a bad source. Sorry everyone for confusing you."
No, damn it! I was about to talk about that. That's a damn shame. So yeah, this guy was the reason why this blew up so much is because this guy that initially brought up this rumor, he basically came out and said, I've had these talks. I can't talk about any specifics yet, but apparently there was this big, there's a driver swap going to happen mid-season between teams, and the reason why it blew up so much, if it was just a nobody or a reporter that that just kind of wanted to spout rumors for clicks or whatever, it's like whatever. But this guy was the guy who predicted Albon would go to Williams. I think he was the first person that was like, Albon's going to be at Williams for this year, which not many people saw at all. Like, that could have easily been just like a random rumor thrown about, but the fact that it just actually came true means like, okay, he has sources He has like
That's a good thing about
sources,
F1 at least is the rumors. There's a lot of rumor mill in F1, but generally there's a core few guys which are regarded as okay. If they're reporting someone, then it's something it's likely to be true, right? Or they label it saying this is just a rumor. But as you say, his initial reports kind of seem to be like, I'm pretty certain this is happening.
Yeah. So that's why it was like there was a lot of speculation, and the biggest one was there was a lot of stupid people out there that thought. That thought they were gonna put bloody Hamilton in for signs or some shit, and I'm just like, shut up, go away. Just because your favorite driver's not doing well in a car that's not very great, like, go away, fuck off.
Yes.
Fucking toxic fans, man. Just let other people do well for a bit. The Latifi Piastri one is one that came up the most often, and the one that you could actually think about and be like, you know what? Alpine may not have a seat for Piastri for next year. There is still that possibility. I think a lot of people, including us, have predicted that he will, but with Alonso and Ocon both in that car and both doing quite well. I think Alonso's low on points. I think he's been a bit unlucky with some.
He's been quite unlucky when you look at it. Yes, ironic. His post-race radio going, "We finally got points." Oh wait, 10-second penalty.
Yeah, so
but still, you'd say that's less his performance again. Yes,
but he has the
Piastri
pace,
kind of.
Yep.
Yes,
but yeah, so Piastri, like, it would be kind of criminal for him not to get a seat in F1 for next year, and I think if Alpine are serious about getting him into Formula One for next year, and they know there's nothing at their team, maybe they would push a lot harder to get him in for, maybe even for this year, potentially for next year as well. But yeah, for this year, and if a team needed a driver that wasn't performing, say like Latifi compared to his teammate, it's something that is potentially possible. It definitely could happen. So. Obviously, it wasn't to be, but it was fun to speculate. I don't know if you saw any other wild changes as well. I think I saw there was like one that was Ricardo out and like someone else that went to McLaren. Like
right.
I don't even know. It was stupid. There was some stupid ones. Like they're not. Yes. I don't know. But yeah, so. That's a shame. It was fun to think about. I don't know if anyone that's listening saw that rumor, but let us know what your wild and wacky theories were. And, yeah.
I say this one was just interesting because it seemed to be more erring that De Vries would be the replacement, which I was
I didn't even see that one at all.
Yeah, what we've predicted on, but then like he's always kind of been there. But then when you see De Vries versus Piastri, and Piastri could basically go anywhere at this point, you'd say, well, wouldn't any team just go for him straight away? And I guess that's a comment on, not to stray too far from current news, but the other comment on Piastri is, even if Alpine do have a problem, he's in such a strong position that many teams have said, look, if he's happy to break contract, to take a risk on us, we'll happily take him in, right? There is that element too.
Potentially, if Alpine are so dead set on this, I only just had this thought as well. But if Alpine really want to keep him as part of their program, if they want to eventually bring him back to Alpine at some point, did Williams really want two drivers that are contracted to other teams as their two main drivers? Do they really want that? Like, they have obviously Alex Albon, who is still a Red Bull driver, like a Red Bull Academy driver, and then they'd have Piastri, who would be an Alpine Academy driver, despite Williams having, is it Logan Sargent? And he's actually
What's the main one.
He is there's a couple of reasons why they would go with him. One, he's American. Big one.
Yes.
Two, he's a really good driver. So I would hope they want to keep their options open for getting him in that seat rather than taking two people outside their academy instead of the one person that is in their academy. That'd be a bit of also to take someone like Piastri, who I believe raced with Logan Sargent as well, to take someone outside your academy that raced against you instead of the person who's in your academy.
Yes.
That would be a big.
Because they were in that F3 years as Prima
so, yes,
teammates. I remember the three teammates in Prima. I don't remember who the second one was. I don't remember.
It wasn't Ilott, was it? No, that was earlier. The other guy.
It might have been. I don't think it was Schwartzman.
Was it Vesti? Was Vesti there? Frederick Vesti? Or was he part of it?
He was in a different team.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm gonna
doesn't
look it up
matter.
now. I'm gonna.
Let's see
It
if
was
we-
Vesti.
It
Sorry,
was
I'm wrong.
Vesti. Oh my god,
You're
you
right.
doubted me.
Sorry.
Who's the
Maybe I'll leave it in. I can be embarrassed.
Who's the junior Formula smart person now?
Only for I say only for that year, and yet I still didn't remember properly.
Oh dear.
Yes. So again, I don't know. We'll see it play out. I haven't heard much of Latifi's opinion on it, but I don't think he has much of an opinion, considering he probably knows the situation he's in.
Yep.
It's easier when you're one of a few drivers performing badly, but when you're basically the only driver that's performing badly, you don't have much to back yourself up, really. Especially when you've got a rookie that's come in, who's had no affiliation with the team, and is smashing it out of the park, and then some. Arguably one of the top 3 drivers of the year. It doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that do look good, I wanted to quickly mention that Bottas has
Oh yes.
I don't know. Valtteri Bottas or Bottas,
Bottas.
if you've been keeping an eye on social media.
2.0.
There was a picture that came out. Yes. There was a picture of him that came out with his lovely bottom showing up in a river, which of course everyone jumped on, and we said, "Oh, it's another bum in F1." We've seen all sorts of bum. I believe we've seen Christian Horner's bum and
Speaking of recurring themes, this is one that's happening alarmingly often.
And so what I like about it is some posts started going around, and then there was basically Bottas and some of his PR team replying to it going, "Hey, by the way, you can buy this as a poster." And everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" And you clicked into it, and they said, "Hey, we're selling this as a poster for 24 hours, and the entirety of the revenue goes to charity."
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I kind of like this. Like, he's being a bit cheeky. He's getting his bum out there. It's a very
Cheeky.
Bottas thing to do. Very nice. Cheeky. He's obviously having fun. It's a funny photo. But then, I saw them post it, and I saw a ton of people online going, "Yeah, I bought this because it's a laugh, it's a fun, it's a conversation starter."
It's so clever.
And it all went to charity. So I'm like, boom, like. I love that. I didn't have much else to comment other than just I love it.
No, I didn't realize that. They sold the picture for charity. That's so good.
Yep.
So good.
And a lot of the teams, even like Mercedes, were posting it. And Mercedes, I think, were like, "Stop sending us this who've seen it." And they were posting the link, going, "By the way, here's the link for charity." So,
fantastic. That's good. That's good to see.
Good side of F1. A bit of a, F1 doesn't need to be all glitz and glamour and Monaco and all that. You can have fun.
Sometimes it can be
also...
Bottas's ass on the poster on your wall. Like,
yes.
Sometimes
I was tempted to buy one, but the shipping to Australia was ridiculous. So unfortunately, I didn't. But if the shipping was lower, I 100% would have bought one as well.
Damn. When we start doing this sort of thing in person, it could have been our background.
Yes,
the recording.
We'll collect them all the bottoms. There's one of DC on the beach, right? We've got to get that one as well.
I don't know if we want that one.
I know. Oh, very good. I guess the last little note I wanted to make, which I thought was interesting, was that Ferrari have actually used up one of their filming days in the past week. They were seen actually doing a filming day in Monza. Reason I bring this up as news is a lot of teams don't really use their filming day to do filming. A lot of them use it as kind of a light test day.
Yep.
They can't I think they have to run on like a Pirelli. I don't know if it's like a Pirelli wet tire or a Pirelli like
test
road tire.
Yeah,
It's basically a non-representative tire, and the idea generally is they're out there to. Most teams take it at the start of the year because they can use it to get their first promo shots for the year to put on their social media and such, and just to do a what do you call it, a test run of the car. It's not test run. There's another word for it, right? I don't know
like a shakedown of the car.
Shakedown, yeah. But Ferrari have used one of theirs at Monza. I haven't seen a lot about what they were doing it. Some people, I only saw a shot of it through some trees, basically.
That's like the only shot, apparently. That,
yes, and they basically didn't announce it, right? Sometimes they'll announce it, especially at the start of the year, they go, "Hey, we're at Silverstone at this date," but they seem to just be out there suddenly, and everyone's like, "Whoa!"
Yep.
So some are suspecting that they're basically using this as an example to test the area on a new big upgrade package. Kind of makes sense, I guess, because otherwise, why would you do a filming day? Maybe if you were leading up to the Grand Prix there and you were doing some shots for it, but that's the only reason I could think for a filming day perspective. So I'll be interested going into Spain to see if Ferrari maybe brought a few bits or in the next few races. I mean, we suspect anyway they're going to bring some soon, but having a filming day here when there basically no team has had a filming day in a while might be a sign of some things to come, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I would have expected if they were going to actually do a proper filming day, I would have expected one leading up to the Italian Grand Prix, being the home race. I don't know. I don't know if this is I think they get 2 filming days. I don't know if this is their first or their second. I assume it's their second. It's like you said,
most would have done that shakedown.
Most do the shakedown, and I think they did theirs at Fiorano or whatever their test track is. So
yes,
this must be their second one. So I think, and because of the fact that it was so secretive, I would say they are testing new parts. The thing is, obviously they've got. I think their aero is decent. I think they're still trying to work out, particularly going to Spain, they're still trying to work out a lot of their porpoising issues running so low to the ground. There's this obvious power unit issue as well, where they are down on the top speed to that Red Bull as well.
Yes, the peak of the band, yeah.
So, maybe they are bringing a few things and they just want to make sure, even for reliability's sake, that it's going.
It could have been a power unit test, yeah. Who knows?
Could very well have been power units. So who knows? I would say there's a very, very, very good chance they were testing new parts though. So, and yeah, they just wanted to give themselves a little bit of extra time. The funny thing I did read about it was that to stop them from going over the 100-kilometer limit. Apparently the car was going down the main straight to start their final lap. Like Leclerc was going down the main straight, and the car just completely cut out. People seem to think it was like an issue with the car, but it just completely cut out. And then they wheeled the car back to the garage from like the end of the pit lane, like at the more or less the end of the straight.
Yep.
And people were like, "Oh no, is there a problem?" It's like, no, they literally did that strategically so the car wouldn't go past the 100-kilometer limit. Because if it completed the lap, it would have gone past it, and then they would have been in trouble. So, I thought that was pretty funny as well. So, but yeah, I would expect them to have tested something. So, I think Spain will be very, very interesting to see what kind of things they will be bringing. I think it's going to be a real test for their upgrade development process, Ferrari.
Yep.
So yeah.
Two little things that I wanted to quickly mention, just more for news for the listeners, and less, I guess, for us to chat about. Jack Doohan, I don't know if he was originally on Alpine's list or if he's recently been put on Alpine's list.
He was taken off the Red Bull program and put onto the Alpine program.
That's
I think,
right.
End of last year or start of this year. So that's a more recent one.
Yep. But he's come up a little in the media because Alpine have said they're giving him a test in one of their older cars around Qatar this coming Sunday. So obviously showing that, they've obviously got Piastri in their books, but they're still kind of showing they're not just putting all their marbles on one driver per se.
Well, also the what we've talked about earlier is the fact that teams have to run two drivers drivers for two practice sessions, I think.
Yes.
Or is it two drivers for practice sessions, or is it for?
No, I think it's just two FP1 sessions a year have to be reserve drivers.
That's right.
I don't know if it's specifically juniors or reserves, but it has to be not their main drivers.
That's
basically.
Correct. Yeah. So maybe
it could be a bit of getting up to speed in case they want to put him in for that.
Potentially.
I guess you'd think they'd be using Piastri again, given if they want to keep him in the fold and do as much as he can. You can imagine that he's probably behind the scenes doing a full campaign of testing and keeping up with everything. But
I hope so. But
still notable there. Less of a news anyway, but if you want to go look at some old F1 cars, the Monaco Historic is actually on at the moment. And there's great commentary there by Alex Brundle? Yeah, Alex Brundle, and a few others as well. So if you want to fix some old F1 cars around Monaco, make sure to go on YouTube and look at that. I've had a bit of a look and never get sold to see those as well.
Yeah, I had a click through before we started recording, and there's some cool cars there. So
yeah, and occasionally you can see a few crashes as well, which is interesting. You feel for the owners of those cars, millions of pounds dripping down the drains and everything. Well. But they certainly push. It's not just like a gentleman's run per se. There's some guys do properly push there. So go check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess there's a big thing that I wanted to dive into as we get to the latter half of this podcast is I guess you can call it rumor mill, but it's not really a rumor mill. It's hard to talk about it, but this whole kind of like not only Audi, Porsche, but also this Andretti thing, kind of the future of F1 of new entrants, seems to be continually rearing its head and moving onwards. I guess I'll let you talk about it, Michael, considering I know you've been mostly across, and I'm happy to back it up. What do you want to start with? I guess should we talk about with Andretti what's been going on since recently? I think last time we talked about it, it seemed to be a case of they were really pushing to kind of go, hey, these are all your check boxes you've got for us to be an entrant. We've checked them all. And the FA is kind of like, cool, we'll let you know when we're ready for you. And they're kind of like, we're ready now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one with Andretti because it seems to kind of go back and forth between like positive signs. You know, the most recent bit of news that I found is that at the Miami Grand Prix, Michael Andretti had a conversation with the FIA. I think he had a meeting with Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who is the FIA CEO now. So he said discussions were good. So I don't know if that's just him saying it's good for the cameras, but I can't imagine he would say that without reason.
Yes.
But then you get the FIA also coming out and saying, basically trying to distance themselves from it.
Yes.
At the same time.
They won't even kind of directly mention it. They're kind of like, we've had interest from candidates, but we're not looking at new entrants right now.
Yeah,
and you go, well, we're kind of like, well, you've only got one person that's actually in the spotlight. I don't know why you're saying entrants plural. Like, I'm sure there's always small fry that are sending you letters and they're just going straight to the spam. We don't need to know about those.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an elephant in the room here, especially with Andretti literally walking up and down the pit area at Miami, talking to every team boss, sussing them out, what they're thinking, and they're just like, oh, we're not specifying who is interested at the moment.
Yeah, so we'll see him again, I'm sure, once we get back to Circuit of the Americas. I'm sure this will rear up again, possibly even before that, but I think that he's going to probably have more conversations then. Having 3 races in America, you're not going to be able to avoid this man.
No,
he's
exactly.
Just going to keep popping in saying, still got that team I want to put in. You got a spot?
Got that bank account that's full. I'm ready to go.
No spot yet. All right, I'll be back in 3 weeks when we have the next race in America. So it just seems like it's gonna. That's what's gonna happen. I think it's just him. It's kind of like how when they teach you when you're going for a job. A lot of people teach you just like, okay, keep checking in and say, oh, just checking in, making sure I had it in my resume. Just wanted to check in and see if you had anything available, just wanted to you just keep
any
going
feedback,
back in.
anything,
something like that. It feels like it's just gonna keep being like that until they're just like, okay, fine, fucking put your team in, fine, stop bugging us, please. It just kind of feels like that's the direction. That's the direction it's gonna go. I mean, Michael Andretti seems so confident. He's already revealed plans that he's going to build an F1 facility in Indianapolis. Which is apparently going to begin in August, like this year, August.
Yes, like they've literally got plans to build it.
Exactly.
And on top of that, he's basically said that he's already signed an engine deal
with Renault.
for Renault engines.
Yeah.
And Alpine have basically come out and they've said, oh yeah, if they join, we're happy with that. It's almost like they're going, no, that's already signed and done. It's like, but they haven't even been accepted and they've already signed a deal for engines.
I don't get it, man. I feel like this is going to be like it's going to stay exactly the same way as it is, where it's like, oh, we've made progress, and then the FAA is like, oh, we don't need anyone else right now. And then I reckon it's just going to hit like a day, and it's going to be like, hey, they're here. We've accepted them. Cool, they're in. Like, it's just all going to hit at once, I feel like all the news is just going to come out straight away without any sort of lead up. I feel like that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
I don't know why, but
it seems like a lot of pushback as well is coming from the teams. What's fair enough is that the teams have gone, hey, the 10 of us have been here. We stuck here through COVID. It's ironic considering Haas didn't actually join that long ago as well, but I guess things were different back then. But all the teams have gone, hey, we stuck our neck out during COVID. We stayed here, Then as a result of that, they said, okay, for any new team that joins, they have to basically pay out immediately a $200 million clause, which would then be split out among all the teams to basically buff up their income for what they would lose if another team joined.
Correct.
And when that news came out, everyone went, oh, that's quite steep, but that makes sense. And then Andretti rocks up. He says, hey, I've got the $200 million. And all the teams go, oh, no, but that only covers us for the short term. We're still going to be stuffed in the long term, so we don't want you. And it's like, why didn't this come up when they were first putting together this clause? Like, the whole point they came out to say, hey, we're interested in the future of F1, but there's this clause for you so we don't get any jokers and no-nabbers in that, right? Which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But then you have a team which seems almost like perfect and kind of has done their 5-year research and has made sure they've got their funds in place and and yet there's still half the team bosses are coming out going, no, we're not interested because they're going to be losing too much money. It's like, well, what the why did you put together this thing and publicize it if it doesn't actually solve the problem with the teams? It feels like they just put it out there to go, oh, well, we're just going to put this out there to make it look like that, we can have a new entry, but no one's actually going to do it. And then the actual team does it, and they all go, "Oh, well, no, actually, that was just a caveat to save all."
Backpedal.
I know, it's like... And that's why I think Andretti's just pushing his case. He's saying, I've checked all the boxes here. I don't understand what the problem is.
Exactly, yeah. Like, they all signed the Concord Agreement. So
exactly, the Concord Agreement is what it's specified in.
They should not be able to argue this because they've all signed it. They've all signed those terms and conditions under that agreement. They should not have any say in this except for what they had to say in that agreement in the first place, which is the fact that they can pay that $200 million dilution fee, and then they can join. They can join the grid. Like, obviously that helps in the short term, and the argument is that in the long term, the name Andretti is so huge, particularly their expansion into America as well with the 3 American races. The amount of revenue they'd be able to bring in for Formula One from the States, honestly, even in the short term, but long term as well, it's huge. Like, surely that, like, with their push into the States, that the teams can't legitimately look at this and say, oh, in the long term, this is not going to be good for us. They're not going to make us back enough money to pay the fees that or the money that we'll lose from them joining. It's like, I don't. It just seems, again, it just all seems a bit petty.
It does seem a bit petty and elitist, doesn't it? It's almost like,
Yep.
It's like, I get that they have their interests in mind, and that's fair enough, but they literally, it came out and they said, oh, by the way, we've covered for this in case someone wants to join. But then they're just backpedaling on it. I mean, fair play to Andretti. He's been public with it. As you say, he was talking to all the team principals. He's obviously, he's not just giving up going, oh, I've got the money, but clearly you don't want me. He's actually doing everything he almost can to try and figure out how can I get my name there. So it's almost nice to see that he's really, really, really keen to try and get, a team going there. But it's interesting. It's funky times for F1.
He also made a good point as well. I'm reading this Autosport interview where they talk to Michael Andretti, and there's teams, even Gunther Steiner from Haas is saying that 10 teams is a good solution at the moment. And Andretti's basically come out and said 10's not a good number because you've got teams like Red Bull who own 2 teams. If they come up to the next Concord Agreement coming up in 2025 when they have to sign the new one, if they decide, Red Bull decide, you know what, we don't want to be here anymore, that's 2 teams gone, that's 4 cars gone. Then you have 16 cars on the grid, and you can't... Is that like 16 cars?
You're looking like S5000. No, it's S5000, but that grid looks small.
It's very, very small. So it's, having that extra team gives you, I guess, a little bit of buffer in that as well, which I thought was a decent point too. Like, we used to run when we had, I know this...
Well, even Marussia and
Caterham
and HRT, even for that tiny bit, it's still...
We had 12 teams, 24 drivers. Like,
yes.
I don't know.
13 for a blip, in the more modern era, let's say, before you go back to pre-qualifying days. And that, as you said, that was the other comment the FIA came out with. They said, oh, well, some tracks are only designing to have 20 garages. It's like, what? What? Like,
Why,
that's
though?
never been a thing. We've had some places that have, barely any room, and they still, back in the day, could run 40, 50 cars comfortably or something, and now it's just like, oh, but no, we can't. It's like, then why do you come out and say, by the way, if a new team wants to join, here's the rules? Why don't you just say, for stability, if they came out and they said post-COVID, for stability, for just keeping everything tidy for 10 years, no new teams, okay, sure, at least they're going to come out with that message. But it's strange. It's like Andretti's just calling their bluff everything they come out with. He's like, oh, I've got that covered. They're like, oh no, so you need I don't know, a driver with 3 super licenses. Oh, we've got one of those. He's the champion of IndyCar. You need an engine. We've already signed it. We need a factory building it next month.
They've got building it next month, and they've already got one in the UK apparently, or they pretty much got one in the UK. So, like,
and it's ironic that this, I guess, just to move it along, considering we've been chatting for a while now. None of the talk about this actually lines up with Audi and Porsche, which now seem to be 2 separate manufacturer entities that want to join with 2 different power units and different kind of strategy with it, and neither of them have had any chats with Andretti. So not only is Andretti coming with all this kind of stuff, it's not even related to this other news that seems to be bubbling on, and this news less seems to be coming out from the FIA side and more from like the Volkswagen group and what they're saying. But it seems like, again, you can probably cover it better than I can, but Audi and Porsche together were apparently going to go together as an entity, as an engine package to try and pair with someone. And now it seems like they're also splitting out into two different entities. So there's not even talking about a new team. That's even unrelated to two new engine manufacturers, which you'd think, oh, I'm a new team, I'm going to bring a new engine manufacturer if they're coming through.
Yep.
That's not even the play at all. So Audi and Porsche, let's go into it before I fall asleep.
Mate, Audi Porsche, there's a lot to talk about. I don't even know where to start. I mean, the first thing I'll start with is the fact that I think one of the big rumors was that Audi potentially could partner with McLaren, or at least do a potential takeover or buyout of McLaren. I don't know if we've talked about this on our channel, or if I've just kind of had this conversation with you outside of recording, but McLaren Audi were very, very heavily linked, and Audi want a pretty substantial stake in a team. Porsche, I think they seem pretty happy being just an engine manufacturer.
Yes.
But Audi want a bit more of a significant stake. I think that's still the case.
Yes, that was the most recent I heard of it, right? The big difference of, again, interesting considering you've only got 10 cars, is kind of Audi understandably going, we want to partner with someone, and there's probably enough teams out there looking for a serious partner. But with Porsche kind of going, hey, we're just putting our stand out there as a market stand.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's not uncommon, again, I guess the point we'll make is that these two teams do both fall under the Volkswagen Group, and you go, but why do you have two different entities within the same global organization? But you don't need to look back that far in even World Endurance Championship and Formula E to see that they've kind of always competed against each other, and it's always worked. So from that perspective, they can kind of operate separately, but they're already going with two different business models here, which is interesting. But yeah, Audi, again, as you say, they were mainly linked with McLaren. I think there was a bit of murmurs they were linking with Red Bull initially when that Red Bull undercut looked to be pretty severe, but now
I think it was
that
more
seems
Porsche.
to be more in the air.
I think it was Porsche.
Yeah,
with
true.
Red
Yeah,
Bull.
Porsche Red Bull. You're right. Yeah.
McLaren Audi was firming. At least a little bit.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
But McLaren, the CEO of McLaren, Zach Brown, has basically come out and said, no, there's McLaren's F1 future is safe. I assume they've had talks with Audi, but obviously not to the point where they think Audi would take.
Because there was a little there where they were basically advertising quite a hefty, chunk of the team for sale even. But they seem to have bounced back from that quite nicely. And I mean, they're expanding as well. They expanded into Extreme E, and we've just seen the news that they're actually taking over a Formula E team as well. Yeah, so they're obviously in a pretty good standing now. They're expanding quite rapidly.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I have seen is that Aston Martin and Williams have both expressed interest in the Works Audi F1 deal.
Which totally makes sense.
Yep, yeah. With Aston, again, something we looked at with, might have talked about, I don't know if it was last podcast.
During their launch period, I think, as well, they were saying their intention to grow, the next 3-5 year plan, and they were looking, if something came up with an engine manufacturer they could partner with.
Or to make their own engine, or, that seems like
a hybrid or whatever,
Yep, and then the Williams, obviously, they're sort of struggling a little bit. That Mercedes power unit is not quite as dominant as it used to be, so they don't really have that need to have the that Mercedes tie, I guess.
And they've always been seen as that Mercedes junior team, but they haven't really now, since Russell's left, that's not really a thing for them anymore. As you say, they've got a Red Bull driver, they might have then an Alpine and a Red Bull driver in, so it's not like they really need that junior affinity tag anymore going forward.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I think if they do decide to buy out some kind of team, it would be weird, particularly if Audi do want to do some kind of takeover. If they take over Aston Martin, would their team name change again? They've changed like 3 times in 4 years, it feels like. They were Force India, and then they're Racing Point, and now they're Aston Martin, and then maybe they go to Audi.
Well, and Lawrence Stroll basically had to buy out half of the whole bloody company, which is a massive company, to get that name. So you'd think, why would he spend so much of his cash to half buy out a global car manufacturer to then get rid of the name for a partner, right?
And then you had, the Dorilton Capital takeover of Williams, and they were worried that they were going to lose the Williams name, and, you don't want to... People were obviously talking about, we can't lose the Williams name in F1. It's so,
Well, and Dorilton Capital made that one of the... that was one of the worries when they bought it off the families. They get rid of the name. But they said, no, we just want our name as a sponsor. The reason we're buying it is because of the family name.
Yeah, so would they be okay with dropping the Williams name, or putting, like, Williams Audi, or, how they used to to do in the past, where like McLaren,
Yeah, 'cause you don't really
Mercedes,
call them Williams Mercedes, do you?
yeah, exactly. So
I mean, McLaren's Mercedes was an iconic name, and often
Yes.
as a kid, I often thought they were the same company before realizing they weren't, just because you heard McLaren Mercedes, and that was such a synonymous name with the sport. And
Sure, yeah. So I think those two teams, they've if what's being said from the VW group, it seems pretty likely that both these teams are looking to enter, given what they're saying. Audi, I would say, are probably looking at those two teams. Those two teams have both come out and said they would be interested in at least having a chat. So it really depends on what Audi's looking for. Yeah.
And with the intention of it being a strong partnership, not just hey, you're just going to put our engine away, man. This is very much like a Red Bull Honda kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Honda weren't just kind of sitting there going, we'll sell to anyone. They were like, no, this is the proper integration and partnership. So Audi are looking to do the exact same thing with a specific team. You doubt they'd be over multiple teams unless it was a Red Bull AlphaTauri type situation, right?
Yeah, it's I don't. Yeah, I think it's still gonna. There's still a lot of stuff to play out with this one. Again, they've still got a little bit of time. The other notes that I had from this is the very first podcast that we recorded. I had all these notes as well. The actual technical regulations for 2026 for the new engines, they've sort of given a bit more information. They're going to limit spending for the engine manufacturers.
That's what they were waiting on as well, to
yes.
also put their hand down, and it seemed like they had a bigger chat internally, and that's when the head of the VW group were kind of like, we like where this is heading, okay, let's actually put out some items to say we're now intending to enter, right?
Yeah, so the current framework includes concessions for new manufacturers, which we already sort of had an inkling was going to happen. So any new manufacturers come and get extra concessions. They get an extra 10 million for the first two seasons, an extra 5 million for the third, and plus a $15 million allowance for capital expenditure projects and extra dyno time. So the only thing I think Christian Horner's come out and said they'd like an increase in the capex limit, which is, like I said, the 15 million allowance. And that's basically to build like infrastructure, the things like the dynos and the wind tunnels, and there's still teams currently in the sport that don't have wind tunnels and dynos, and like they don't, or
their own per se.
Yeah,
some
their
are
own.
still
Yeah,
shared,
they're still shared. So it's like 15 million is kind of not a lot for those sort of new manufacturers.
You'd have to use it really smart. You're not going to be kind of just throwing money at what you want. It's a bit of a the tricky thing with that, I guess, straying a bit away from it, is of course Red Bull, because it's kind of been like Red Bull. You still think of them as running Honda, but they're technically running Red Bull engines, and their kind of idea is they're trying to. Why I think there's a bit of a delay on the finances side of how that's going to work out for quote unquote new manufacturers is because Red Bull seems to be trying to place it in a position where it's then going to be running a quote unquote new engine from 2026, when in reality it might just kind of be like an advanced rebadge, let's say, right? Because they want to try sneak their hand into this money. So from the perspective of Porsche and Audi, assuming they're going to run as complete separate entities, which they'll have to, it makes sense, this kind of thing. And it's almost like there's this sticky thumb of also Red Bull trying, as you can tell, maneuvering itself to also get in there, despite the fact that fundamentally it shouldn't. So that's probably why as well there's a bit of hesitation there.
Even on top of that, there's also the Porsche were obviously pretty heavily linked with Red Bull. So if they have like a collaborative engine effort, there's the concern that a joint project between Red Bull and Porsche could benefit from combining two separate allowances, either by design or accident, if the rules are unclear or not policed properly. So, like, if Red Bull and Porsche both considered new manufacturers, could they both receive a full allowance each, even though they're technically working on the same project? Is that?
Or if Red Bull kind of takes it for 2026 and then they join with Porsche 2027, they've been doing their own thing, but then they go, well, they've both had a year to... It gets messy, right? And that's why the Audi thing seems pretty straightforward, where they're like, we just want to start with someone as a new entity and build up from the ground together, and you go, okay. But this Porsche thing seems odd, because it just seems like, as you say, that they're putting up like their market stand, but then you go... Well, that's not really going to work, because, again, you've only got 10 teams, and anyone that wants a new engine manufacturer is going to want someone that's like an in-house kind of shop, not just like an off-the-shelf kind of thing, like the what do you call it, the Cosworth DFV, you know, the classic kind of off the shelf engine. We're not really at that stage anymore. I mean, we saw when Marussia and Caterham and HRT joined, and they took that kind of, you know, F1 said, hey, we bring back Cosworth to make a cheap engine, and then it was complete dog crap, right? It didn't work at all. So it's like, it kind of shows signs of going, okay, if they're not trying to do this, then what the bloody hell are Porsche doing? And I think the other interesting thing is that we've seen a lot of this word come from, you know, the CEO of Volkswagen Group and a lot of the meetings there, but really like extremely little from the actual like F1 side or the FIA side. So it's almost like they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna, you know, join in a few years, and then you look at the FIA side, they're like, well, there's nothing from us, we got nothing. You know, you don't see actually any comments from that side of it. So there's obviously something under the table, but different from the Andretti thing where you hear a lot of comments coming from both sides. This seems to be entirely from one side. And for something that should be getting traction, to hear nothing from the actual F1 side, I think is interesting. But it might just be it's 4 years away. I don't know. It's interesting to follow. It's enjoyable to follow. At least.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other things I'll mention on it that I've just kind of read through my plethora of notes from last time. Remembering a couple of things, but Audi potentially. Obviously, we know they're looking at running their own engine separately. Apparently, they're likely to be based on the abandoned V6 engine that Porsche developed before scrapping their potential F1 entry in 2018. Yep. So apparently Audi are going to be using that as their basis. And I think what the race, which is the news platform that we use, that we seem to trust
and don't
the
forget
most.
The hyphen, or whatever they say.
The hyphen race, yes. Audi, they had a planned return to Le Mans 24 Hours. That's apparently on the. They seem to think it's on the brink of being scrapped after it was put on hold. The race,
the hypercar program.
Yeah, the race believes it's. I don't know if it was a rumor or if they had sources, but they believe it was to direct resources to pre-development of the F1 project. So,
and they're also pulling out of Formula E as well. I think as Audi Apt, which has been such a big name, almost as much as whoever the Renault team was. I forget if it was Renault Prost or whatever it was. But it was basically Audi versus Renault was the start of the whole Formula E rivalry, if you followed that at all. So Audi's been a big team, Audi Apt. Basically, they've also pulled out of that, right? So for this hypercar thing to have been so big, which it still is, there's a lot of brands coming back for that, for them to pull out of that, you know, and to end their Formula E entry, while they're still doing well as a company. So it makes even more sense that they're actually saying, okay, this is, you know, how serious we're gonna take this project. And again, it seems odd you don't hear almost anything from the F1 side, considering it looks like that they're just already full guns blazing into this, despite there still being some rules to work out, you know?
Yep. Yeah. And the very, very last thing we haven't mentioned, because the other team that the Audi was sort of linked with, I say sort of linked with, I don't know if they've had discussions or if it's just because they're one of the other teams that could have an engine manufacturer like Audi, is Sauber or Alfa Romeo.
Oh, yes.
And they've been mentioned slightly more in serious terms, at least on this race article, for a couple of reasons. One, they have their openness to forego their naming rights. You know, they've obviously previously...
They're known as Alfa Romeo, but they are still Sauber, right?
Well, yeah, it's Sauber, and then they were called Alfa Romeo, and previously they've been BMW, so like they're not super attached to their name. Yes. And the second thing is Sauber obviously have quality facilities themselves already, and Audi's actually used their facilities to develop their LMP1 car in the past. So they've had that relationship in the past. So there is that possibility that maybe they could take that Alfa Romeo / Sauber team as well. So again, we're not hearing a lot. A lot of it's sort of hearsay at the moment, and what we've gathered from that conversation from VW. Like you said, we're not getting anything from the F1 side of it. So, but you know, you never know when more information will come. Like you said, there's still many years. The draft for the 2026 regulations is supposed to be finalized. They're targeting June, so next month. So if that goes ahead as scheduled, then maybe next month, when they actually finalize it, we might get a bit more. Yeah, a few more things pop up. So, but you know, at the moment, we're just kind of getting little bits and pieces as they pop up. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on it. The only, I guess, one other thing is the fact that because Porsche and Audi, being VW, it could help revive the German Grand Prix, which has been out for a little while as well. So
Yes.
you know, with more German manufacturers in the sport, you know, obviously having a lot of US races, you know, might help getting an American team in. Or like they're talking about getting, we need an American driver because we've got all these American races.
Yes.
We've got Zhou Guanyu in. Once they go back to China, obviously that's going to be a big thing as well. So
And then won a second Chinese race because of that.
exactly, yeah. So like they're trying to sort of manage it a lot in that way. So it would make a lot of sense that if they do get these German manufacturers, there's like, okay, we've got German manufacturers, we've still got, well, I say by then we might not, well, we'll have a German driver hopefully in Mick Schumacher, maybe not Vettel, but
Yes.
you know, you would hope that, okay, maybe there is the possibility we could go back to Germany, which I know a lot of people have been a bit upset that none of the German tracks have survived the culling of the tracks, the track
Yes,
schedules.
indeed.
So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, it's still a long way to go. So,
I think we might as well wrap it up there, unless there was something else you really wanted to chat about. There's a few other little things, but we can bring them up next time.
Yeah,
next time we
nothing.
chat, sure,
Yeah.
there'll be plenty to talk about.
yep.
Again, if you've enjoyed this chat, look, let us know. Again, if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to hit that follow button so you can see these episodes as soon as they appear on your feed. If you're watching this on the YouTube, make sure to make sure to check that you're subscribed. Comment, let us know some of your thoughts, potentially what you want us to talk about. I guess I didn't explicitly see anything pop up, comments from people they wanted us to discuss this episode.
Not really.
Probably checked with you before.
Well, to be fair, I wanted to get I made a call to action for that on the video I uploaded literally before we started
Very
recording
true.
this one. So you know, if you asked any questions or anything on that video, it'll be on the next
We'll carry it
podcast.
forward,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
We're not going to be too far from our next podcast, but
We've got a double header,
thanks for
I
listening,
think,
guys.
So we'll have about 3 weeks until the next one.
Yeah.
Possibly. But yeah, this is good. I'm glad we got this conversation. A lot of good catch up on a lot of the F1 stuff. It seems to build
For
up
sure.
so quickly.
yes,
Yeah.
there's plenty to come. You can feel it.
Yep.
It's exciting. Yep. So we'll next see you in our preview for the Spanish Grand Prix, which is happening, as we say, next weekend, I believe. So
Yes.
look forward to that one.
Yeah, should be good. Thanks for listening, everyone. But yeah, we'll see you on the next episode of our podcast as well.
Yeah. Well, good. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.